guys, it's me Catherine and today I'm here to bring you my series review for the Red Rising trilogy by Pierce Brown, consisting of Red Rising, Golden Son and Morning Star. So what is it about? So Red Rising is set in the future when humanity has begun colonising other planets and society is now split into different colours. So a human is born into a certain colour and that dictates what position they are in society, what kind of jobs they can do and their quality of living. And we are introduced to a 16-year-old called Darrow who is a Red, and the Reds are tasked with mining beneath the surface of Mars. So they all live beneath the surface of Mars and obviously their living conditions are atrocious, and they're mining something called helium-3 which is going to help make the surface of Mars habitable. And we follow Darrow, who after certain events happen in his life ends up trying to take on the Golds, the superior humans in this society, trying to make a better life for his people. I really enjoyed this series. I didn't know what to expect when I went into it, but when I started reading it, this series has had this kind of familiar feel to me, a kind of homey feel. This series has kind of been like a mixture of everything I know and love. And each book has had kind of a different feel to it. So Red Rising had more of the Hunger Games dystopian type feel to it. It felt more on the dystopian side than the sci-fi dystopian side. I still really enjoyed it, but it felt more it leaned more towards that Hunger Games dystopian type feel, except it's not every man for himself. They do kind of work together as teams and things like that, but that's the kind of feel I got from Red Rising. Golden Son, there was more politics in this, politics plus fights and battles and such, but it was more on the trying to beat them at their own game type of feeling. And then Morning Star is basically just this, let's kill the That's obviously not what happens, but that's the kind of feeling of the overall, let's just planning for battle, let's just go in, kill who we need to kill, and then that's good in it. As for the characters themselves, the characters are flawed. They're all flawed. Most of them are too caught up in what they are or what they're not to really be anything but flawed. But that doesn't necessarily make that doesn't necessarily make them bad people. There's the odd one or two, but most of them aren't bad people. They're just flawed people, and I really like flawed characters because no one likes someone who is right all the time, who does everything the way they should and never says anything wrong. That makes for a really boring person. Not that there's anything wrong with boring, nice, good people, but it's just, give me some flaws. Give me some flaws. And then there's Mustang, who is the voice of reason in this series. She's that good person, that genuinely good person who knows what needs to be done and is trying her best to get it done in the best way possible. She's that sort of boring person I was talking about earlier, except I can't really call Mustang boring, but as far as the other characters go, Mustang's is more on the tamer side. Then there's obviously you've got Darrow. Darrow is flawed and he knows he is, and he makes mistakes and he realises when he's made the mistakes. And there's things that he does that make me angry, and it's nice that he's flawed and he comes upon things that he can't do this by himself, and he realises that he can't do it by himself. And as far as protagonists go, Darrow is, so far in the books that I've read, Darrow is the one that frustrates me the most, but for the right reasons. He frustrates me because he's flawed. He does things that maybe he shouldn't have done, and he faces the consequences happen. It doesn't just all wrap itself up. He makes mistakes and he has to face the consequence of those mistakes, and I really enjoy that. That's what I really enjoy about Darrow as a protagonist, and how Pierce hasn't just like, oh yeah, he made a mistake, but that's fine, you know, it's not the end of the world. No, it kind of almost is the end of the world. Darrow makes a mistake and he doesn't fix it right away, and things happen that he could have avoided. And if you're wondering, my favourite characters are Cassius, Sevro and Ragnar, because Sevro and Ragnar are crazy, and Cassius, I kind of have a soft spot for Cassius, and I will talk about that more in the spoiler a bit because I don't want to spoil you guys who haven't read it. Okay, so then we go on to the writing. Now this series is not a pretty series. There's nothing pretty about Darrow, nothing pretty about this society, this universe that Pierce has created, and his writing reflects that. There's nothing flowery about it. There's lots of piss and plenty of bloody damn swearing, and it works really well for this series as a whole. The way that Pierce writes really works for this series. But that's not to say that Pierce can't nail it when it comes to describing certain emotions, because I think he can, and he does get it perfect. Like this particular quote that I'm going to read from Golden, so it doesn't spoil anything. It's just about how Darrow is doing something and then all of a sudden somebody mentions something and this emotion hits him, and I just think it describes it really well. Yet each time it strikes me like a physical blow, nerve ending shivering in my chest, heart beating fast, neck tight just under the jaw. And if anyone's ever experienced that, when you're doing something and somebody mentions something and it triggers that sort of emotion in you, and I think that, at least in my opinion, I think Pierce described that perfectly. So while the writing isn't pretty in this book, it doesn't need to be pretty, I think Pierce still describes emotions, raw emotions, really, really well, and I really liked that. The style of writing he has suits, as it should, his series to the T. So that is it, guys, I'm afraid, for the non-spoilery section. So if you haven't read the Red Rising trilogy and you don't want to be spoiled, then I'm going to say goodbye now. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you in my next video. And now for the spoilery section. So first off, Darrow's transformation in Red Rising. I can't even begin to imagine how painful that must be and how it didn't change him. Like, that kind of pain, you can't go through something like that and not be a different person. I mean, obviously he's a different person because of the transformation, but going through that kind of pain mentally, I mean, how strong mentally do you have to be to survive that kind of amount of pain? And I don't know, I just think Darrow goes through a lot. Like, obviously his wife dies, and then he tries to kill himself, and he wakes up and he's not dead, which is a blow because he wanted to die. He wanted to go and join EO? I'm not sure how it's pronounced. EO. And how the gods have basically lied to his people for who knows how many years, because Mars is already colonised. There are already people living on Mars. It is already lived in. And so that's another blow. Then the whole transformation thing, making him a gold, and then he goes to the academy with plans on, basically he goes to the academy, he knows what he's got to do, but in his mind he's thinking, right, in the end these golds are all going to die, so it doesn't matter. But shocker, he realises that these golds that he's with are humans just like him. They have feelings and emotions just like him, and it's not going to be as easy as just killing them all. It's not going to work that way. I just feel really sorry for him because he came in thinking it was going to be so simple, because he was so full of rage and anger that it all seemed easy to him. They made him a gold, but he wasn't a gold. Deep down he was still a red. But as the series goes on, obviously those lines start to blur, and I forget that Darrow is a red. You forget that he's a red, and I think that's the whole point, because I think the lines are starting to blur for Darrow as well, because he makes all these friends and these relationships with these golds, the enemy, and he realises it's not going to be that simple, and obviously it's going to take his toll on him, and he makes mistakes and he does things he shouldn't have. Like when he finds out that Ao was pregnant, I got really angry at this, because I was angry at his wife, I was angry at her for doing what she did, knowing that she was pregnant. She got herself killed knowing she was pregnant. But Darrow, rather than being angry at her, he was angry at the golds for killing her and his child, and he was going to do that bomb, and then obviously he wanted to save Roke, so he jabbed Roke. He put him to sleep, basically. He jabbed him with that needle, and that was, I think, the biggest mistake that Darrow made. And it was her fault, Harmony's fault, for doing that to him. Because she knew, and she used it against him, and I just think, I mean, eventually Darrow learns, he realises that this wife he's built up in his head is not as perfect as he remembers her, and if that hadn't have happened, maybe Roke wouldn't have done what he did. Maybe Roke would have stood by him, but he didn't, because Darrow had to try and save him. He should have just left him like everybody else. Which obviously brings us on to Roke's betrayal, and you can see that building up throughout Golden Son. You can see it. Darrow putting off fixing things with him, and the end when you find out that Roke's going to be the one handing him the, I can't remember what it is, some kind of medal or something, I can't remember what it is, the crown. And I knew at that point that Roke had betrayed him. I knew it. I didn't quite expect the bloodshed that happened, but I just knew that Roke had betrayed him, and it broke my heart. It broke my heart because all those people died. Roke helped the Jackal, the frigging Jackal, and all those people died. All those people died. And obviously in the end the Jackal gets what he deserves. But I did kind of feel sorry for him because all he wanted was his dad to love him. He just wanted approval from his dad, but he was twisted and he was beyond redemption by the end. So in the end he deserved what he got, deserved everything. Then you've got my favourites. We've got Sevro and Ragnar, who are fucking nutters, absolute nutters. Ragnar embraces his freedom. It takes him a little while, but as soon as he embraces it, it's like he's a whole nother person. He is just absolutely... And I love him for it. I loved him for it because it was nice to see him after what he was and see what he became, what he could, how he called Darrow his brother, and then he died. He died and I was devastated. I was devastated. And Sevro is the craziest of the crazy, and it's kind of sad because when you come to him in Morningstar, you can see how much he cares for Darrow, how much Darrow means to him, and then you see how, because he kind of lost his way. When Darrow was gone, Sevro kind of lost his anchor, and then he kind of, anything went with Sevro once Sevro became Ares, and anything went. It doesn't matter who you killed, just get the job done, and that was that. And when you see that and when you realise, and then Sevro and Darrow have it out and Sevro cries, and I love that man so much, so much. And then when he went to hang himself, the crazy bastard, I mean obviously I get why he did it. He knew exactly what to do. Darrow went in without a plan and he was going to get all those golds killed. And then Sevro does exactly the right thing. I mean at first I thought he was just gonna get them all killed, but it actually he knew exactly what he was doing. I just think it was perfect. Sevro walks past the bound gulls, tapping their heads playfully as he goes. "That one's mine," he says, pointing at Cassius. "Get your hands off him, lady." She doesn't move her knife. "He cut my father's head off and put it in a box, and unless you want me to do the same to you, you'll do me the courtesy of letting go of my property." Sephi backs away but does not sheath her knife. "It is your blood debt. His life belongs to you." Obviously. He shoos her away. "Stand up, you little pixie," he barks at Cassius, kicking him with his boot and hauling him up by the cable around his neck. "Have some dignity. Stand up." Cassius rises to his feet awkwardly, hands behind his back, face swollen from the beatings, the sling blade livid on his chest. "Did you kill my father?" Sevro flicks him on his broad chest. "Did you kill my father?" Cassius looks down at him, no measure of humour to the man, just pride. Not the vain sort I've seen in him over the years. War and life have drained that vigorous spirit from him. This is the face, the bearing of a man who wants nothing more than to die with a little dignity. "Yes," he says loudly, "I did." "Glad we cleared that up." "He's a murderer," Sevro shouts to the crowd. "And what do we do with murderers?" The crowd roars for Cassius's life, and Sevro, after making a show of cupping his ear, gives it to them. He shoves Cassius off the edge of the walkway. The gold plummets till the cable around his neck snaps taut, arresting his fall. He gags, feet kick, face reddens. The crowd roars hungrily, chanting Ares' name. At that point, I thought he'd killed Cassius. I thought Severo had just like, yep, you know what, if they want Gold's dead, we'll kill him. Mobs are soulless things that feed on fear and momentum and prejudice. They do not know the spirit in Cassius, the nobility of a man who would have given his life for his family, but was cursed to live while they all died. They see a monster, a 7-foot-tall former god, now mostly naked, humbled, strangling on his own hubris. I see a man trying his best in a world that doesn't give a shit. It breaks my heart. Yet I do not move because I know I'm not witnessing the death of a friend as much as I'm seeing the rebirth of another. My company does not understand. Horror stains Cavax's face, Victra's too, even though she had little pity for Cassius all this time. I think she mourns the savagery she sees in Severo. It's an ugly thing for any man to bear. Holiday pulls her weapon, eyeing the Reds nearby who point to Cavax, but they're missing the show. I watch in awe of Severo as he bounds up onto the railing, arms wide, embracing his army. Beneath, Cassius dangles and dies, and the crowd beneath makes a game of seeing who can launch themselves high enough to pull his feet. None succeed. My name is Severo O'Barker, my friend cries out. I am Ares, he thumps his chest. I have killed 44 golds, 15 obsidian, 113 greys with my razor. The crowd roars in approval, even the obsidians. Jove knows who else, with ships, railguns and pulse fists, with nukes, knives, sharp sticks. He trails off dramatically. They slam their feet. He beats his chest again. I am Ares. I am a murderer too. He puts his hands on his hips. And what do we do with murderers? This time, no one answers. He never expected them to. He grabs the cable from the neck of one of the kneeling golds, wraps it around his own neck, and looking to Sephi with a demented little smile, winks and backflips off the railing. I mean, he is one crazy, and I love him for that. For that, I love Severo for what he did there, because yes, he might have wanted Cassius dead. Yes, he kind of did kick him off, but he knew that Cassius wouldn't die. He was hoping that, you know, everything would go right and they would get cut down, and they did. And I love Severo for that. And obviously now Cassius gets to live, and that when Darrow was talking about him, and I never hated Cassius. I was annoyed at first when he turned on Darrow for killing Julius, his brother, but then I kind of thought, well, how would I have reacted if it had been me in there and my sister, and he'd killed my sister and my little sister. Mind you, both sisters, but my little sister more so, because my little sister is more on the personality of Julius, and I would have done exactly the same, so I never hated him for that. Cassius was never a bad guy. He was never a bad guy. He just did what he thought was right, even if it was wrong. He just did what a good gold should have done. That's what Roke did. Roke did what any good gold would have done. He turned on Darrow when he found out that Darrow wasn't gold, that Darrow was red. He wanted to protect his society, his family, and so you can I can understand where Cassius, where Roke were coming from. And Roke didn't get it. Roke died. He died believing that he did the right thing, and it was sad. And Cassius, obviously Cassius gets to live. Cassius got to live because he understood, he realised, he wanted a world where people like his brother could have survived, because it wasn't fair what they did to him. And then of course we get the very ending of the book. While the very ending of the series is a bit cheesy with all the family stuff and the baby and things like that, but you can kind of forgive it because of what's happened up until that point. Their lives have been shit up until that point, so you can forgive a little bit of cheese. But I am going to stop that there, guys, because I don't know what I'm saying anymore, if I even did to begin with. That is it from me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what your guys' thoughts are on Red Rising. Obviously, please be mindful of people who haven't finished the series. But apart from that, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!